and welcome back to the Vinyl Biography Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Smith, and today for episode 11, we have a great guest on the show. It's my good buddy, Matt Sands. First, I met Matt on YouTube. He has a great YouTube channel. His handle on there is DJ Mellow Yellow, and he has a buddy, Sam, the psych professor, and they do a great show to where they talk about the psychedelic records that they're finding, and they kind of give you a rundown on each one and what they sound like. Great stuff. They also have a college radio show called The Psychedelic Experience, where they play psychedelic music that they like, and they have some funny banter. The guys have great chemistry. They're hilarious together. Both guys are just a trip. And also, he recently opened up a record store in his hometown. There wasn't a record store anywhere near him, and he got the chance to open one up. And so he is living the dream. Got a great record store going, and the guy's just a fantastic dude. I've had a lot of interactions with him over the past few years, and he's just the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back. Just really, really great guy. Just stand-up guy. I will give you a little bit of a disclaimer. We kind of did a Skype conversation. We each had a camera. We each had a microphone. And we did this whole interview, and I got all the components and meshed them all together to make a YouTube video. But during the process of all these cameras and all this Skypeage and the microphones, you know, some things happened, and there was a little bit of a lag here and there, and so not everything was consistent, so I pretty much had to edit every single word, switch back from his mic to my mic to his mic to my mic, and so things got a little hairy, but it, for the most part, is pretty clean. I spent a lot of time trying to clean it up, so I apologize if that gets on your nerves a little bit, but I think you'll enjoy this episode. Matt's a great guy, and I can't wait you to hear from him, so check it out. This is Matt Sands. Joining us today is the amazing Matt Sands. He is just has so much vinyl prowess. Good friend of mine. Glad to have you on here. Glad that you agreed to do this. I know you're a busy man.
Oh man, I'm blown away you wanted to have me on here. I was telling you earlier on the phone, I said my brother is a huge John Mark McMillan fan, and I told him I was going to be on this podcast and that he'd been interviewed. And he like freaked out. I was like, yeah, it's been John Mark McMillan, Ben Wysocki of The Fray, Ricky Skaggs' son, and then me. So I was like, this is going to be the least listened to episode, hands down. So
it's been great watching your channel through the years. So I usually will start off by telling everybody where I heard of this person at. So with yours, it was about 5 years ago. And I was really, my whole life been into classic rock and stuff, and just was buying and selling collections, and I'd found like some Incredible String Band and Strawberry Alarm Clock and just some psychedelic stuff, and I'm like, man, I really kind of like this stuff. So I just started searching on YouTube around, and then I find you, and you know, this is DJ Mellow Yellow now, and then the psych professor, and I'm like, well, these guys, they are on a whole nother wavelength. So I was like, man, and so I started like taking notes and stuff. So I got some records to show that I discovered from your channel.
All right.
Yeah, these are some of my favorites. Just a few. So this is the first one, Bob Smith, The Visit. And I think you'd found this at a record show for super cheap or something.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to find one at a reasonable price. But this is The Visit by Bob Smith. And it's a killer psych record with some good fuzz rock and everything. The second one being this, Thunder and Roses, King of the Black Sunrise. Killer blues rock. Great stuff. I loved that as soon as I found it. And then the last one is Morgan.
Oh man, I'm so glad you got a copy, dude. That's awesome.
So you have an original copy of this, right?
I do.
Because I know you gave one to Bo, didn't you?
Yeah, I got really lucky on eBay one year right before Christmas, and got a copy super cheap, and I had already had one, so I sent it on to Bo since he'd sent me just some crazy stuff that year. And yeah.
Yeah, I know he sent you some Velvet Underground stuff. So for those of you that are listening to the podcast, on YouTube they have this thing, this vinyl community on YouTube, and they have this thing called VCLT, which is Vinyl Community Love Train, is what that stands for. And then people will just give other people records for free. It's great. So anyways, that's what we're talking about here. But so those are some great records that I discovered from watching your channel and stuff. And so after that, over the years we've been corresponding and talking, and it's been a pleasure. You're always nice to me, and when I was always asking questions, you're always very gracious in answering them. So I know there's so many questions to ask, but tell me how you got into the whole thing, like how you got into records and into psych and all that stuff.
Yeah, oh man. So records themselves, my parents had some. I remember them a little bit when I was younger, but they sold them really early on at a yard sale. Like I was like 6 or 7 years old when they got rid of their stereo and records and stuff. But my dad just loved music. So we always had it on in the house or in the car, going on road trips and stuff like that. And my grandparents, when we would go to their house, my grandpa had a big record collection. It was all country and bluegrass. But whenever we were there with family gatherings, he'd be there sitting by the turntable the whole time, just playing record after record after record. And it was stuff like Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, all kinds of like bluegrass, like Bill Monroe. And those were my first memories with vinyl. And it wasn't really my thing. My dad wasn't too into country, even though he grew up with it. But it brings back such vivid memories of being in their house, sitting next to the turntable and watching Grandpa pull stuff off the shelf. So that was my first experience with records. And I really don't know how I got into collecting them myself. It was after I got married. We got married in 2007, and my wife, we went to Southern Illinois for my wife's law school. And that would have been around 2008, 2009, somewhere in that area. And by then I already had like a little crate of records. I mean, like maybe 20 records total, and this cheap all-in-one crappy turntable. But when we moved down there in like 2009, that's when it really took off. There was a good record store there called Plaza Records. They're still around, great guys. They had really good dollar bins, and since I was on a budget, wife in law school, I was the only one working, I just raided their dollar bins like once a week. Would go there with like 10 or 15 bucks and leave with 10 or 15 records, and the collection just expanded from there.
Yeah, that's how I did it. I sold all my records. That's how I got into dealing records, is I needed money, and when I was a kid I collected them, and when I got married I sold all my records, and then I was like, this is going pretty well. I'll go to Goodwill's and pick them up, and then it just started a crazy, insatiable fire. But so how did you get into psych?
That came a little bit through the YouTube vinyl community, actually. I'd kind of searched for some record videos, like how to clean your records and stuff, and came across Super Wes. I'm sure a lot of people have seen his video of like he made his own record cleaning machine. And from there I saw like, oh, this guy also makes videos showing off records. And then just went down the rabbit hole and discovered Mark Ditch's channel, Glass Orchid Aftermath, and then Bo Earhead 6 on YouTube. And those guys have just insane 60s and psychedelic record collections. And I was like, I kind of like this stuff. I'm going to find some more. And then just kind of started picking up stuff here and there. The big one being Cream's Disraeli Gears. That was the first one that was like, just mind blown, opened up a whole new world of music and records for me, and I just kept going down that rabbit hole and kind of haven't looked back since. So it's
crazy, like, because I knew, listening when I was a kid, all the major classic rock stuff, and I was sick of it. By the time I was out of high school, I just had heard Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Aerosmith, Cream, all that stuff out the wazoo till I was just done with it. And I'm like, man, I don't want to listen to the radio anymore because I've heard all this stuff a million times. And then I started getting into collecting records, and I was like, holy moly, that's like 1%. There's so much more stuff out there, and like with psychedelic stuff, I feel like you could. I have friends that have collected for 10, 20 years, and they still learn new stuff every day. What was the first album you bought with your own money?
With my own money, I actually have it right here. It goes back to talking about that stuff, listening to my grandparents' living room. The first one I bought was Johnny Cash at Folsom Prison. I went at Plaza Records. This is the first one I remember buying. I know when we moved down to Carbondale, I had a little crate of records. I don't remember what they were or where I got them or why I had them. But this was the first one I remember going into a store and being like, I want to find that record. And, I found it was like $6 or something. And I was like, this is the one today. I'm buying this one and some dollar records. And, that was the first official record I remember buying. And this is still the same copy. I've not needed an upgrade, and just such a great record too, man. I mean, you know, it's on 500 greatest albums list and all that kind of stuff, but it's just that live recording of him in this prison playing music and the crowd interacting with him. I get goosebumps almost every time I put this one on still.
Oh, it's timeless. It's great, man. The time you started collecting records, I imagine, it was not a common thing among your peers. What drew you into it?
Man, I'm a big history guy. Love history and anything that can kind of connect you to the past and stories and just any kind of history. So I think that's what kind of took me there, because I had a lot of CDs, but it was like, I don't know, it doesn't have the same thing. They just feel newer. Like I was alive when CDs became a thing, you know. So for records, it was sort of like, man, who owned this? When did they listen to it? What was their, like, did they put this on during parties, or was this something they listened to by themselves? That whole connection to the past and to the music that feels a little bit more visceral, because it's, you know, the grooves are being played on a needle and coming out of your speakers that way instead of being scanned digitally. That just threw me right back to the 60s when a lot of this music was recorded and made, and I fell in love with that connection and that history. Yeah, so
I know you try to get the original press of things, and I guess that goes back to the history side, because I think a lot of people are that way. I'm definitely that way. From a historical standpoint, like, it's really, I mean, I'll buy reissues if I can't. I mean, some records that are $1,000, you know, I'm not gonna try and get an original press, but yeah, sometimes, I mean, if I can get something, like I've got a Bob Dylan promo of his first album. It's a promo copy, and like on the front it says a new Columbia artist. So like at that time, whoever was the first one to open and play that record, they'd never heard of him before, you know, and like, a couple other ones like that. I've had some that have some really cool backstories to them and stuff. So that's something I really like about it too.
Definitely, yeah.
Now I'm kind of fascinated with it, how cool it is that it's come back into style, I guess, because when I always did it, I was the weird kid that collected records. You know? As it's come back, it's like, why did it come back? I mean, I know why I like it, but I think people are starting to see, as there's so many smartphones and everything, that everything's instant gratification, that this is something that art is worth taking time to appreciate the whole package. But anyways, that's just my spiel on the deal. So I love asking this question. Do you think that records will go out?
Man, honestly, for a while I did, because I started collecting right ahead of the big vinyl boom, and so then kind of seeing people hop on the bus, it was sort of like, oh, this is a fad that's going to last a couple years and it's going to fade. But it's like 7 or 8 years later, and it's stronger than it has been ever, I think, still. So I don't know. I don't see it trending downward anytime soon, and if it does, I think it's going to be a little ways down the road, probably another 8 to 10 years before we start to see it kind of really trending downwards, probably. So,
well, the way I see it is that, like back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, you had people that were record collectors that collected for the same reasons we do, but you also had a lot of people that just bought records because that's the format that they had to buy, you know? And so they weren't married to it. It wasn't something that was super important to them. It was just the way you listen to music. And then when CDs came along, they just ditched them and went to CDs. And I think that's a totally different thing now, because people are choosing to collect records and choosing this format when there's a lot easier ways to do it, you know? And so the people are getting drawn into it's a whole nother thing, I think. I just don't think it's going to go anywhere, but that's just my opinion.
I hope it doesn't.
Well, it's not going to for me. And I know a lot of people that are like, I'm never going to quit. So, I mean, hey. But, I mean, even if you look at, like, prices, if you look back on the internet, if you go on PopSpsych, you can see in 2005 what records were selling for. And rare records are still selling for good money then.
Exactly.
That being said, do you think CDs will come back like vinyl has?
It's kind of funny because actually I think CDs are kind of like vinyl back in like the early 90s, you know, where it was like people were just kind of ditching them. They were ditching the records, and I think they're doing that with CDs now. It's super easy to find CDs at thrift stores and even at record stores and stuff. They're just getting cheaper and cheaper, I think. People just aren't into them as much, and it's it's funny because CDs at one time were the convenient thing, like, oh, I can take them in my car, but now we've got our phones. So it's like, I don't need to haul one of those little, black cases with the little sleeves where it's like, I can take 50 CDs in my car. It's like, I've got Spotify on my phone. I can listen to millions of albums. So it's like, why am I going to take up space with CDs? I'd rather do it with records and get rid of the CDs. So what you can't see right over here are like 2 huge shelves worth of CDs. So I still have mine, but I think they are kind of going away a little bit. So
yeah, I have some, but I heard or I read an article that was saying that some of the first CDs that were ever made are starting to corrode in the order that they were made. So because of, and I don't know if maybe they improved the makeup of the CDs that they were making because they saw there's a problem, but what was said is that it is going there eventually, unless they were stored really, really well, they're going to start corroding. And so, I mean, you remember those big notebooks that you would, I had a huge notebook, had like 300 CDs in it. Lord knows where those things are. Those are destroyed.
We used to do like CD burning parties, where it was like all your group of friends would get together, all bring your notebooks and like on one computer just rip them, and everybody would just start burning copies of them. We'd do that for like a whole weekend.
Yeah. Let's say, what is your ultimate grail? If you had a genie in a bottle that you could rub, what would you have him bring you?
Man, the one that I always quote as my grail is Gandalf. It's not insanely expensive. I mean, it's like $200 to $300. That's an expensive album for me.
That's a good deal on that one. I've seen them. Yeah.
I know, right? So it's like, you could name a private press thing that's like thousands of dollars or something, but that's the one for me that when I first got into Psych, I'd see the cover and I always thought it was cool. I love the name. I'm kind of a Lord of the Rings nerd, and then I listened to it on YouTube once and was like, oh, I gotta get this record. And then I looked up prices and was like, oh, I'm never gonna buy that record because I'm too cheap to pay what it goes for. And then it's just kept going up and up and up, and it's just through the roof now. So that's the one that I would definitely say is my, if I had one wish, I'd make that one appear.
Do you have a reissue of it?
I don't actually. No, I just got it digitally. So
you holding out? Like
I am. Like, I feel like if I get the reissue, it sort of curses it. And I know that's stupid. It doesn't make any sense, but
no, I get it. That's what I did with this record right here. I didn't buy a reissue. Do you have this?
I've got a reissue.
Those that are just listening, this is the 13th Floor Elevators, the Psychedelic Sounds, the 13th Floor Elevators. This is an original mono copy that I got super lucky on. I never bought a reissue because I didn't want to admit defeat.
Right.
I did not. I got it. So I was that's one of the most significant finds for me. But yeah, that was crazy good. But anyways, so let's talk about you a little bit. What do you want to talk about? Just tell me about Ryan Adams. I know that he was significant, and don't feel ashamed about it because of me anymore.
So talk about Ryan Adams. He was like really big for me in college. In high school, I did not have good musical taste at all. It was like I listened to the crappiest like pop punk. When I got to college, I was around people that actually had good taste and knew good music, and people were like super into Ryan Adams. It was right before Easy Tiger came out, and I was like, maybe I should listen to a little bit of his stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. It was kind of, it's alternative country, so it kind of hit a little bit on those roots from my grandparents and stuff. And maybe it's like the country stuff's a little bit in my DNA, but it was different enough and rock enough that it appealed to my kind of classic rock taste too. So I got super into him, and that was kind of my first exposure to like, critically good music. And I just picked this bad boy up off Discogs. The Love Is Hell Mobile Fidelity box set. So somebody purged it after the allegations and stuff. Yeah, there we go. There it is.
Same thing here. I bought this the day his allegations came out. And so, like, one of my friends was like purging all of it, and I was like, when this blows over, I got this for a steal.
Exactly, same here, man. I had a friend that, like, he's the biggest Ryan Adams fan I know, bar none, like, tons of the singles, every album, like, rare pressings, and the day it happened, he was like, I'm getting rid of all my stuff, I can't have it anymore. And And I was like, you might just wait a little bit. So I don't know what he did, but I found this on Discogs for $30, man. Could not believe it.
What?
Yeah. Dude, it was crazy. The guy, it took forever to ship. It took like 3 weeks for the guy to actually send it out to me. I think he was having doubts on whether or not to do it, but he ended up sending it to me. And I was just like, I feel a little bad about it, but not bad enough not to buy it. So,
well, here's the thing. I mean, while we're talking about Ryan Adams, let's talk about Ryan Adams. I mean, with him, I felt like when I first heard it, because I watched This Is Us, I was like, whoa, you know? After I started thinking about it, I was like, you know, if I just threw away all the records of every person who's done anything wrong to women or anything wrong in general, then I wouldn't have any records left. I mean, you know, Jimmy Page married like a 14-year-old, and so did Elvis. And, like, you know, Ray Charles was a terrible person, but his music's great, you know? So,
exactly.
I mean, you know, was it like Sid Vicious killed his wife, killed his girlfriend, you know? People still love that music. So, I mean, I love Ryan Adams, and I hate it for him, but I also hate, you know, what he did, but I'm staying out of it. He still made good music. You listen to Jason Isbell at all?
I've listened to a few tracks on like Spotify and stuff, but I haven't taken the deep dive into his stuff yet.
He's good. They're buddies, him and Jason Isbell.
Okay.
Ryan Adams. But he's a good, really good songwriter. I've dove in deep with his stuff. His album Southeastern's really, really good. So you were still. I figured you were still a fan.
I am, man. You know, it's like you said. It's one of those things. Like, I don't like the stuff that came out about, especially about the younger girl that he was talking to online and stuff like that.
I forgot about that.
It's terrible. I mean, it's really bad. But like you said, like David Bowie had some stuff with younger women. Or younger girls even. I don't want to say women, girls. Jimmy Page. I mean, like, tons of guys in the 60s and 70s that we don't even think about now as having that past. They were all there. And, you know, if you can separate the art from the artist, I don't see any harm in it. And buying this on Discogs, none of the royalties went to Ryan Adams. You know, it was huge.
That's very true.
I'm not supporting him necessarily. I'm just getting the music, so.
I've never bought a brand new Ryan Adams release, so I feel pretty good about myself.
Ah.
I have a friend that's a huge Ryan Adams fan, and he's like, I'm putting it aside for a while, and he even sold me a bunch of stuff. He's like, I just can't listen to this right now. So I'm not that emotionally connected to the individual.
Right.
That's not that I don't care, but I don't want to see how the sausage is made. I just want a dang hot dog, you know what I mean? I mean, come on. Anyways, so sorry to get off track there, but I thought that would be an interesting conversation. Well, first of all, when I watched your videos, I was always like, this guy must have 1 million records. How many records do you have? Seems like you have a lot.
It's around 1,500. Right about 1,500, I would say. And it's like 90% 60s. So, yeah.
I have, well, see, my number's fluid because most of it's inventory. So
right.
A few months ago, I had 25,000, but now I don't. Speaking of inventory, so you have done the dream that many of us want to do, and you've opened a record store. I don't know where to start with that, so you start with that. How did that happen? I know how it happened, but how did it happen?
Right.
And what tips would you give to any of us that want to do that someday? I mean, I would love to do that one day, but
yeah, you should too, man. You've got the goods for it. But yeah, it started. My friend Brian had a little store. I'll say store in quotations. There was a coffee shop in a town about 30 minutes from where I lived. And he would sell records out of there kind of as like a consignment sort of deal with the coffee shop. And I didn't know him at the time. I knew who he was, but didn't know him very well. And I would go like twice a week. He priced stuff dirt cheap. It was amazing. It was like, again, right before the big vinyl boom. It was kind of right at the cusp of that. And I was super cheap back then. I was like, every record I buy, it has to be like an average price paid of $3 an album. So he had stuff, and he would price things at what he thought it should be worth. And he hates classic rock. So like, I got all these like CCR, some Zeppelin, all kinds of stuff for like $2 and $3 a pop. Because he was just like, nobody needs this stuff. Like, they shouldn't have this. This is the good music you should have, that he'd price at like 15 and 20. So I'd go and get all the good stuff in the cheap bins. And I started going enough over and over and over that I started to get to know him a little bit. and he would sell at the St. Louis Record Show. And one time he called me and was like, hey, do you want to come help me sell at the show so I can buy, you man the booth, and I'll give you store credit? And so we started doing that for about a year. I would go and work these record shows for him and get store credit. And we kind of developed a friendship and a relationship. And we would talk about, like, how great would it be to actually open a real store? You know, that's never going to happen. But I think, you know, we'd partner in it if we could ever get the chance. And then he got busy with life and stopped selling out of the coffee shop. And then fast forward like another 4 years, maybe even 5. And a friend of ours had lived in Denver for a while, moved back to the area, bought a building downtown, completely renovated it. My friend Brian is a carpenter. He renovated the whole thing. Made them an apartment upstairs, storefront down. And when the storefront got finished, our friend Devin was like, hey, how serious were you guys about having a record store? Because if you want it, I'll rent this space out to you really cheap. And the number was so low that we thought, we can't not do it. We've got to give it a shot. So we spent about a year building up inventory and kind of getting the word out around town. Sold a little bit at like a vintage shop in town to get more money coming and going so we could get more collections and stuff. And then last March, we actually opened the doors at the Gold Pan. Devin runs a recording studio in the back. We've got the record store up front, and first year went fantastic. We have very low expectations for being in a small town. Don't require a ton of sales to keep the doors open, which is good, but it's definitely exceeded our expectations, and it's been a ton of fun. And I still kind of can't believe I have a store, but it's a lot of work. It takes a ton of work. I'm sure you know how tough it is getting inventory, kind of keeping it constantly coming in, while also having a little bit of cash on hand in case more collections come in, you know, one of those things. But that's been the biggest thing for us, is trying to find records to keep stocked.
Yeah, I mean, when I got married really young, so I was 21 when I got married.
Yeah, same here.
Oh, wow, so you've been married for 12 years.
Yeah.
So when I first got married, like, it was tough, man, and when I was selling records, it was hand to mouth, so, like, I only had, like, a couple $100s to work with all the time, and luckily at the time, records were a lot cheaper then, but see, like, now, that would never work. The problem is inventory, and, you know, you have to be able to, if you find a really good collection, say, here's $2,000 or whatever, you know. It's just it's tough to let go of money like that, but yeah, that's the hard part, is finding inventory now that everybody and their brother's doing it.
Exactly.
And you know, since the invention of Discogs, everyone is an expert because they have the app on their phone. And you see these guys in the thrift stores with the Discogs app out looking at everything. Sorry, I just, you know, it's a pet peeve of mine. Just, you know, guys that just look up things on Discogs and then they think they know everything. So, but yeah, that's definitely, you know, when I started, you had to really know what you were looking at. And a lot of times I'll go into the mountains or something and be in some guy's garage and not have service and have to know, you know, what I'm looking at. So, anyways, but yeah, that's really cool that you guys were able to open that store. When I heard about it, I was super happy for you. So,
thanks, man.
So from what I understand, you don't keep a lot. So that's weird.
Yeah. It's so tough, man. It's so tough.
I keep way too much. That's like the hardest thing. Yeah, sometimes you're like, I got to pull some stuff out of the stash to cover what I'm keeping.
Right.
And I got to commend you for, you have some seriously good self-control with that. But it seems like for you, it's more of a act of service to the community that they're able to have a record store. What town is it in?
It's in Hillsboro, Illinois. It's like an hour right in between Springfield and St. Louis. It's an hour in either direction of those towns. So super small town. It's like 5,000 or 6,000 people. So
yeah. I mean, that's a dream for a lot of us, and you know, maybe one day I'll be able to get to that point to where I'll do it. It's always something I've wanted to do since I was a kid, but now, you know, it's hard. But Yeah, that's really cool that you were able to do that. So what are your plans for the future with it? I mean, so you guys are open on the weekends right now.
Yeah, we would like to be open maybe a couple days during the week. We've got a guy that works the counter for us when we can't be there, which is really nice. It's helped free up our time a lot and kind of give us a chance to spend some time with family on the weekends since we're just open Fridays and Saturdays right now. But yeah, we would love to be open a little bit longer, but right now we're just having a lot of fun keeping records stocked and meeting new collectors from the area and bringing people in from out of town to our little town. Our downtown is kind of having a little resurgence right now. We've got 2 new breweries opening. There's some good restaurants. There's a food truck in town, a really great coffee shop, a good movie theater. So anything we can do to bring people in from the outside to come see this little town and kind of boost the economy in Hillsboro a little bit is always kind of our main goal for it. But as far as the record store goes, right now we're really focused on expanding new vinyl. We've had a lot of people like getting into collecting that want new stuff, which is really cool. It's super expensive to buy. There's almost no profit on it, but we're trying to build that up a little bit while also keeping the used stuff kind of flowing and coming in too. So mainly just about expanding the inventory right now, for sure.
Yeah, it's tough for new stuff because you can get in a lot of trouble buying new inventory that sits for a long time, so that's definitely tough. But so you have on your YouTube channel a partner in crime, Sam, the psych professor, and I gotta say, he burned me pretty good.
Dude, it was so good.
It wasn't a burn. I was flattered when I saw it. I was shocked. But Sam and I, we do bear a striking resemblance.
You do.
It is true. Him and I, when I first started doing videos, I had glasses, so then we really looked alike. And a lot of people even were like, "Hey, Sam," and they would like ask me questions and stuff. And I'm like, "I'm not Sam," But it's so funny. So in their last video, Sam impersonated me. He had a Noble Records shirt on, and he did a pretty good job. I gotta say, he had me pegged.
Hey guys, Dylan from Noble Records here, from North Carolina. Or is it? Or am I? I'm just kidding.
How did you get in contact with Sam, and what's y'all's relationship like? I know you guys have like a radio show where you did at some point.
Yeah, we met in college. We were in the same class kind of going into college. I didn't know him real well our freshman year. Knew him a little bit towards the end of our freshman year and really got to know him really well our sophomore and junior years of college. Then I dropped out and got married, and he graduated with my wife, but we were in a really close-knit group of friends that stayed close after college and stuff even. So that's kind of how we met. But what was funny is we met and bonded over movies. We're both like total movie snobs, and that's what he has his master's in, is media studies and film studies, and that's what he teaches at college. And then after college, like a few years down the road after college, he had come over to our house. We lived like hours apart for a while, and then we kind of moved back a little bit closer to each other. And he came over and was like, "Holy crap, you have a ton of records." And I was like, "Yeah, it's kind of nerdy, it's kind of my thing." He's like, "No, man, I have a lot of records too." And I was like, "What? How did we not know this about each other?" And then it was just like, let's hang out, let's go to record stores. Hey, there's a record show, let's go. So that kind of, the friendship was already pretty strong, and that just it blew it up after that. So
you guys, what happened with the radio show? How did you land that?
Yeah, so he's a professor of media studies at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois, and he's the general manager of the radio station. He's kind of in charge of the student programming and stuff. And one summer he was like, "We don't have any programming scheduled because everybody's out of town. They're all on break, summer break. You want to do a radio show? We'll just play some psychedelic stuff." I was like, duh, absolutely I want to do this. And then we liked doing it so much that we just kept it going. We still do it every Thursday night. I will say over the last year or so, it's been kind of sporadic. Just both of our schedules have kind of gotten crazy over the last year. But we try to do it as often as we can. Take a week or so off every now and again. But yeah, it's mainly just like, if anybody's ever listened to it, it is totally self-indulgent and self-serving. Like, we play 60s music, but then when we're talking, it's hardly ever about the music. It's just like, "What'd you do this week, man?" Like, it's just an excuse for us to hang out and catch up. So
that's great. But you guys, your YouTube channel's great, and y'all's videos are awesome. You're always very. I've always been impressed how well spoken and how you've researched every album, and it's very informational. Mine is more like I have a stack of records and I don't even prepare anything. I just like, hey, and so that's it's very, very good. But
we fake it till we make it, man.
You guys rock it. You guys are awesome. Very good chemistry, and it's hilarious. Good channel. But anyways, so if we're ever all three in one room, we'll definitely do a podcast together. That could be quite the riot. But anyways,
well, give us some insight, man. So how do you get how do you get people to contact you about records? 'Cause I got to know your secrets.
That is the question. It is not witchcraft. No, it's that's what everyone asks me all the time, and the answer is hard work. And I say that because I know it's easy to see, like I have on my channel, I have I buy around 2,000 records a month and sell around 2,000 records a month, the ones I don't keep anyways. But, and it's just, there's some luck involved, but I don't show the times that I fail, which is more times than I, don't. But, there are times, like last year, I had bought a collection from somebody in 2012, and they had told somebody else about it, and they had my number for years, and then they just called me out of the blue, and the guy had this guy had passed away, and I got 1,000 incredible psych records, and it was just that was one of the best collections I've ever bought. But that was more luck, but not really, because for 10 years now I've been laying groundwork, handing out my business cards, putting flyers up everywhere I go, putting signs up on the side of the road, telling everybody I know, going out and doing pop-ups in the community, stuff like that. So it's been so many years of struggling and fighting, scratching and clawing to get good stuff that now I've developed enough friendships and enough word of mouth to where it's kind of starting to steadily flow. Just in the last year or two, it's starting to steadily flow. But another thing is, I know a lot of collectors like that. So, and I don't know if you've done this. I'm sure you have. When you started your record store, I imagine you did it. But you go to where you have so many records, and you're like, all right, I need to chisel this down a little bit into what I really want it to be, and so in your collection you just start pulling out stuff you don't listen to anymore, that you don't really care about, that maybe at one time you thought was interesting but now you don't. So that's what we call the purge. And I have a lot of friends, a lot of record collectors, that when they do that, I'll trade them stuff or I'll give them cash, and it's just you have to be the first person that they think about when they think, I need to get rid of some stuff, and so that comes with just, honestly, and I'll be completely honest with you, and you know this, I'm sure, but the number one best thing you can do to have a good business, probably in any business, but especially with records, is to treat the customer with respect and be helpful and kind. And there is this old, I guess there's a viewpoint of a record dealer or a record store owner that you can come up to them and say, hey, I've really been into this band and this band and this band. What could you recommend me? And they say, here's this, and it's the perfect thing. That takes a long time, and a lot of records to listen to get that. But when you have a relationship with your customers, they become your friends. I mean, now I've got so many friends just from doing it. And when you treat them with respect and they know that you care about them, they start caring about your business, and they will bring you stuff. And it becomes not a business tactic, because it's such a relationship with people. So doing things the right way, treating people right, giving stuff away sometimes, when you can, being helpful, don't act annoyed when people ask you questions, stuff like that. That has helped me out more than just about anything. But also, I think a lot of people don't want to put in the work. A lot of people will ask me, in our area even, they'll say, I don't know how you do it. But it's just, it's not only hard work now, it's hard work 5 years ago. So
Right.
that's my secret. It's not very much of a secret. I mean, but yeah, no. And a lot of people are like, in North Carolina, man, records must grow on trees. They don't. It's hard. They are hard to find, even now. But I've got a lot of good friends that if I ever was gonna do a pop up and I didn't have anything, I could say, hey, I need some stuff, and
Sure.
and they could round some stuff up for me. So it's not. It's good to do that, but that's in a nutshell. That's the question I get asked more than anything, and it takes a while to answer it. So that's my answer for that question. So I hope that's sufficient for you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because I know with the store, it's like there will be weeks, like we'll go 2 or 3 weeks without getting anything new in, and we're like sweating, like we hold a lot of stuff back so that when those droughts come, we've got stuff to put out every single week and keep the bin stocked. But it's like, there have been times where like, I don't know what we're going to do. And then a collection will walk in the door. And then from that, you'll get another collection and another collection. It kind of snowballs. For us, it's kind of either feast or famine. We get a lot at once, and then we'll go through a big drought. But yeah, the St. Louis record show is like every 2 months. So that comes at a perfect time. It always seems like right as soon as we're starting to dry up a little bit, we'll have the record show. We can stock up, and then we'll get collections that come in and stuff. But yeah, we've been trying to figure out a way to get the word out. Like, we buy records and we pay fair. We think we pay more than pretty much any record store in an hour radius, just from our experience of trading stuff into other stores and stuff. But we kind of tell people we're not like the St. Louis stores where they're getting people bringing stuff in every day, multiple times a day, and big collections. Like, when stuff walks through the door, we can't let it leave. We got to buy it and keep it here for the store. So we've just trying to brainstorm a little bit on how to get the word out about it. But like you said, it's just putting in the work. Yeah.
As time goes on, I think you'll start to be people's go-to for if they're going to get rid of stuff. And when enough people start getting to know about you, it'll be a snowball effect, and you'll have stuff in more regularly. But since you're out pretty far away from all the other competition, you should be able to, as time goes on, be able to get more stuff. But yeah, that is definitely the biggest struggle, is finding stuff. And it always, because I get people that email me from all over the world, from China, Argentina, all this stuff, like, will you sell me records in bulk because I want to sell them at my record store? And I'm like, no, the problem is not selling. That's the wrong problem. The problem is buying it.
Exactly.
When we have our big pop-ups, like our last one, I think we sold 1,200 records in one day.
Wow, that's awesome.
After that, you're wiped out, and you're like, I gotta find some stuff. And that's fun to find some stuff, but it does. There's definitely times where I'm sweating and I'm like, good Lord, I'm completely wiped out. It's always interesting to see how people do it, because everybody does it a different way, but I just try to do every way and then fail a lot and then strike rich. And like, I go to Goodwills every time I pass them, and I never find anything. But people will remember that 1 in 1,000 time I found a bunch of like sealed Tom Waits records at Goodwill one time. Yeah, that was awesome after stopping a million times. So
yeah, my best vinyl find ever. Well, one of my best vinyl finds ever was my copy of Morgan. I found it at the local Salvation Army for 25 cents.
That's crazy.
It was crazy, man. Like, again, this was kind of all before that big boom, but we had a guy in town. He calls it his vinyl ministry. He used to own a record store in Hillsborough back in the 80s. And he was a teacher. After he retired, he just started going to thrift stores and yard sales and estate sales and buying records like crazy. And then he would go and donate them to the local thrift store, because he was like, I know there are people that'll pay $0.25 a piece for them, and they'll get the money for it. I'll get a little bit of a tax write-off for donating stuff, and it'll help the thrift stores out. And he would find just like the most ridiculous stuff. Like, I got my copy of Sgt. Pepper's at the thrift store, Pet Sounds at the thrift store, because of the stuff that he was donating. And one day he donated this huge batch of records, and it was all like great, solid classic rock and some like weird 60s stuff. And I'm flipping through the bins, and I come across that album, Morgan, with the Scream cover on it. I didn't know what it was, and I was just like, that cover looks cool. And I opened the gatefold, was like, oh man, this thing is like pretty legit. It's a gatefold, I'll take it home and see what it is. And so I take it home, and I put it on the turntable while I'm looking other stuff up on Discogs that I had bought, and like it starts, and I was like, what is this? What did I buy? This is amazing. And I looked it up on Discogs and was like, oh my gosh. So I'm like texting Sam, texting Bo, like everybody, like, look what I found. This is crazy. So yeah, you never know what you're gonna find, man. Like, I still have good finds every now and again at thrift stores, but you gotta go consistently to find the stuff. Because if you go once a month, somebody's probably beat you to it unless you get lucky.
Oh yeah.
But if you're there 2 or 3 times a week, man, you can get it when they put it out. You know.
Yeah, I found an old Miles Davis. I don't even remember which one it was now, but it was an old 50s Miles Davis 10-inch. It was in like mint condition. I got like $3.75 for it, and I paid a quarter for it. That was probably the best one for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, what's the most you've ever spent on a record? I won't tell anybody.
No, you can tell. Yeah, no big deal at all.
It'll be on my podcast, but I won't tell anybody.
I recently bought, and I have it right here, on eBay, a record I never thought I would have, because I didn't think I would spend the money for it, first of all, and I didn't think I would actually win the starting bid. This popped up with a starting bid of $75, and I put it in kind of hoping that I would get out big, so I was like, I've never spent more than $60 on a record, and I just don't know. And then like the next morning I woke up and was like, you've won the auction, and it was the End Introspection.
Yeah.
An original US copy. I'm kind of mad at myself because if you can see, it's not going to show up real well in the video, but the introspection's a little bit faded because when I was cleaning the cover, I must have had like a little bit too much like spray on it, and it just sort of wiped some of that introspection off. But it's in really, really good condition on the London label there. Oh man, it's such a great record. So $80 shipped, you know. Not a bad price at all for that. So that's officially the most I've ever paid, and that was like 2 weeks ago. So prior to that, it was $60.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I've gone into some gray areas. I don't know if you see my latest video with the Led Zeppelin turquoise lettered Led Zeppelin. Yeah, that one I didn't pay anything for it, but I did trade a lot for it. So
what's the most you've ever sold a record for? Do you mind
That's
saying?
what I was gonna ask you.
Okay, yeah.
So a few years ago, I had bought a Led Zeppelin. I got a really good deal on. There's a Led Zeppelin bootleg called Strange Tales from the Road, and it's a 10 LP box set. It's really sweet. Anyways, it's all colored vinyl, really cool vinyl bootleg, and I got it. I can't remember how much I bought it for, but I think it was under $100. But anyways,
oh, man.
Yeah, it was a phenomenal deal, no doubt about it. And I posted a picture of it on Instagram. And that's kind of a risk to post it on Instagram, because then if someone sees it, they're like, "Is it for sale?" And you're like, "No," and then they start giving you offers, and you're like, "Well, crap." But this guy just got his tax returns back, and he's like, "Is it for sale?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "I just got my tax returns. I got some cash." I said, "Not for sale. I don't want to talk about it. Don't offer me anything. I want to keep it." He said, "I'll give you $1,000 for it." And I said, "Okay."
Yeah.
Some of the rare things like that, I've gotten some decent money for. From there, I sold. I didn't want to sell this one, but I had a Bob Marley, the Catch a Fire.
Yeah.
With the Zippo cover, and it was a first pressing, Jamaican pressing.
Oh man, that's awesome.
And it's a red Tough Gong label, really, really rare. I mean, I don't remember how many copies were made, but Bob Marley could have owned it. And I didn't want to sell that, but I sold it for $500, and then
nice.
I sold some really rare Pink Floyd bootlegs for $500. So that's about the. Oh yeah, and I sold a couple other like really rare ones for in between $500 and $1,000, but that happens very, 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 very few and far between.
Yeah,
sure. Rarely do I sell a record more than $100, but you know.
Yeah.
What about you? Have you had any big, awesome sales like that?
I've had a couple. My first real big one. There was a guy I knew that collected. He doesn't collect anymore, but he would only shop at thrift stores and stuff, and then every once in a while he would have a yard sale where he would sell records. So the thrift store in town had records for $0.25. At his yard sale, he'd sell them for 50 cents. So he'd be like, I'm making a little money off of them, and I'm getting rid of stuff. And one day he called me. He was like, hey, I'm going to have a yard sale, but I want you to have first crack at stuff. So I went and looked, and it was like, man, there's not really much here, but I feel bad that the guy gave me first crack, so I'm just going to grab like 10 records, stuff that I don't know what it is, on the off chance that it's something, and take it home. And one of the records was Earthen Vessel. I don't know if you know this. It's a super private press Christian psych rock album from like 1970 or 71. It's super Christian lyrics. Like, one of the songs is called Get High on Jesus. But it is like a wall of fuzz and wah-wah and just like crazy guitar. It's awesome. It was my favorite record in my collection because it was just, A, it was so rare, and B, it was just like, this music is insane and it's private pressed. And I had it for about a year or two, and then we bought our house, and the day we had like signed the papers to buy the house, my car broke down, and it was going to be $750 to fix the car, and we had just put the down payment on the house, and it was like, man, that kind of sucks. We've got the money in our bank account to cover everything, but boy, that sucks. And my wife was like, you know, you got that rare record, like, why don't you just try selling that to make up for some of the price? And I was like, whoa, don't be crazy. And then I was like,
I mean,
you know what? That would probably cover a lot of that price. And I ended up selling it on eBay to a guy in Germany for $750. So it covered the car repair, but I have regretted it every day since then.
Who needs cars?
Yeah. And I found a couple like rare Soul 45s that I've sold for like $400 and $500. That's happened a few times, but yeah.
I had a friend that had a shop, and he had a rare blue 78. I cannot remember for the life of me what the name of the album, what the name of the artist was, but it was a rare blue 78, and he had put it on eBay for like $100. It was a starting bid, $100, and it kept going up and up, and somebody offered him $1,000, and he's like, well, no, I'll hold out. Then someone offered him $3,000, and he's like, well, no, I'll hold out. Someone offered him $5,000. He's like, now I definitely have to hold out just to see what it goes for. I think it went for $23,000, and he had no idea.
Gosh.
You know, so that was pretty crazy.
That's nuts, man.
Well, we're coming up on an hour here. Is there anything you want to leave with us?
No, man, just thank you so much for asking me to be on. I'm honored, and again, I'm warning you, this is gonna be your least listened to episode of this podcast. People are gonna be like, who is this guy? But thank you for asking me, man. This has been so much fun.